Hello everyone, my name is Jean-Marie Shimu. I'm the partnership lead of the Voices community and the founder of Naweza. I'm here today with amazing colleagues from the field of refugee issues and basically impact in community. And we're going to be dissecting a few issues around the barriers to refugees. And my colleagues or panelists will help me to do that. So we'll start with a bit of introduction and then go ahead on the barriers. We'll speak on how to respond to that, basically the recommendations and also solutions. So allow me to invite you to this conversation. As I said, my name is Jean-Marie. I'm here at the Refugee Connect Summit. It's the one amazing, it's with the preparation from Botropa Group, which is a refugee organization in Kasarani. So allow me to invite my colleagues and they'll introduce themselves as they follow each other. So, George.
Thank you, Jean-Marie, for having us at this Refugee Connect Summit. My name is Olaga George. I happen to be the founder of Political Intent. I'm also the Chief Communication Officer to IBC. Perhaps we'll maybe elaborate more as we move forward there. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Jean-Maria. My name is Dio Achul Dio. I'm working as the East Africa Regional Leader for Tasha Refugee Student Network. I'm also the founder of Monicado Enterprise. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's an honor. My name is Victor. I'm a team leader with Oak Solutions, a refugee in Kitengela.
Okay. Thank you all for the introduction. I think we are all doing an impact in the community. I've had a lot of communication, there's education, and there's also solutions into the community. Well, we'll start this very quickly by just, can we all, I'd love to hear what you think about access to opportunities to refugees. Do you think that it's easy for refugees to access opportunities? And if there are any barriers you want to speak on aid or any subtopic that you feel, I'd appreciate to hear from you. So maybe we could hear from George and then the rest of the members.
Oh yeah, sure. Education is like a key to our development. I would say refugees have somewhat been left out. Let's take an example of, let's say, primary education, and we can as well go to up to secondary education. Most of, maybe let's say secondary education is being subsidized by the government. And I will say the refugee community are left out in that program, whereby it's becoming so hard for refugees maybe to be enrolled in universities, because that has been a challenge for them to finance their education. So I'll say, yeah, education has been a hurdle to achieve by refugees, simply because most of the government program has not captured refugee community. We do also realize that once a refugee comes into a host country, you see, refugee will also want to feel like they are part of the community. So I will agitate maybe for refugees, because they are somewhat left out in all those programs. Yeah, that's one challenges refugees are going through.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you've spoken about exclusive policies around education.
Yeah.
I don't know if either Theo or Victor would love to speak about the policies in Kenya around education, if there is any. Is how, like George spoke about, it's hard for them to access university, for example, because of the fees. It's been huge. Are there like specific barriers to education that you can point out that are tied maybe to systems or policies?
Okay. As for me, I think there's issue with, when it comes to education, we have something that is issue with funding. First of all, in 2019, during the Global Refugee Forum, there was a launching of 15% by 2030. That was for higher education only by the UNHCR. So before 2019, it used to be the number of people or the student enrolling or the refugee enrolling to higher education was 3%. But as for 2021, it's 5%. So the number is a bit increasing. As the number is increasing in higher education, we also have challenges with high school. We have many of refugees graduating from high school, but they're not in a position to access this scholarship because we have limited scholarship. And at some point also, because most of these universities, school fees is a bit expensive, like let's say it's a range of 70 to 80,000 Kenya shillings, that is equivalent to 700 to 800 US dollar, to which some of the refugees are not in a position to provide for their kids.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Limited funding is a big thing, not just to education, but to even other programs. Thanks for George for bringing out the education bit and also I would love to hear from Victor on your context about what do you feel, what's your thoughts about inclusive education in Kenya? Is it inclusive enough? We can speak broadly about refugees and even other persons of concern.
Allow me look at it from a very different perspective, in the sense of after education, so what? As an investment, yes, it's a good thing, and I'm among the people who is really advocating for it. But there are issues when it comes to policy. We have the government, we have UNHCR. Those are key players when it comes to policy, so that it trickles down to the refugee. But I'll say this, my take would be, I look at it as in terms of even after the education, so what next for me? That's where I'll take it up from. Because I was trying to look at the something to do with urban refugee policy, 2019. I think that's the last one they did, 2016. There's an issue of, there's a permit they are issuing right now for refugees for free. I think it's a class M permit or something.
Yeah. For work, yeah?
So I take that as a plus in terms of policy. I mean, that permit, if you're not a refugee, I think it's being charged at 50,000 Kenya shillings. So yes, there is an issue with policy, it's slow, but there's a plus. There's a discussion ongoing and with time, because the issues of refugee, especially in a country like Kenya in our context, we are always behind in policy. These are not issues we planned for. As a country, yes, we still have issues we are dealing with. So now, this is like an additional issue, which we should be a bit patient. Yeah.
Yeah. For you, so you're speaking about the after education.
Yes, the after. And that is, I mean, just even that class M permit being given out for free, it's already an acknowledgement from the government. Yes, we hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may be slowed in other areas, but that's already a plus for me.
Yeah, I think that's very true, because you want to progress after school and everything.
Exactly.
Maybe in the context of you as a Kenyan, you've been interacting with refugees. Do you think they are welcomed enough in the institutions, or do you think that they are not? And if they are, what are some of the experience you've had with that in the same?
I will look at it from a very historical perspective, the history of education itself. Not exactly, but let's say approximately 42 tribes in Kenya with a uniform education system, trying to bring all this together. That's why we have, you see, our high schools. Before the county governments came in, we used to have national high schools in different areas. So you find someone traveling from Western all the way to Nairobi for purposes of cohesion. Now bring in refugees. So already we still have issues there's still issues of tribalism in this country up to now. Now you are adding another dynamic to the issue. So I will say yes. From my interaction, I will say Kenya is very welcoming. Because if you look at countries like, I think it is Egypt, Cairo is in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
It's very tough for Afghan refugees there. If you look at New Delhi, there's a lot of issues. It's a no-go zone for some areas. But if comparing, Kenya is doing better. It may not be doing the best. We have issues, yes, of stigma, but we are at a better place if you compare us with other nations.
I agree. I can't agree more on that. Of course, it's about a process that will take some time to be effective. I think you spoke very well about the certain pledges that are made at the Global Refugee Forum, and I think she's a great advocate of refugees. She's been doing a lot of work in the community, and we appreciate you for that. Maybe then from your interaction, what do you think is missing with this advocacy of education for refugees? Is there still something that's has not been dealt well, that you think people are just speaking on it very likely and they need to be a bit more of advocacy or a bit more of effectiveness?
Yeah, as for me, I think that most of the time we do the talking, but when it's come to implementation, that's where the problem is. Because most of the pledges that were made in 2019 during the Global Youth Forum in Geneva, some were implemented, to which some are not yet implemented at the moment. And then also we had issue with funding. So implementing something something, it needs funding. But the question is where this funding are. That's where the problem is. So I think it's about theoretically, but it's not action. There's no any action that has been taken to implement most of the things that were pledged during that time.
Okay, and then there's no also follow-up.
I think there's a bit of follow-up because I've been receiving a lot of emails from Geneva, but the question is, are these implemented also in Kenya? Because this is where I am at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, George, hearing what Adele has said about a bit of follow-up is happening, but it's more theory. It's a lot of conversations and no practical effort to the same. What do you think needs to be done better? I know you're more on leadership and governance, but as a student, as a political scientist student, you understand that this is all things about administration, it's about leadership and those kind of things. What do you think should be done with issues around refugee education that's transitioning to high school and going to university, and even what we just spoke about, the after school? What do you think needs to be done better or more?
Yeah, I think once a student who is a refugee has completed his maybe, let's say, secondary education, because for the Kenyan context, once you are done with your high school, the details are in the system, and you are easily enrolled in these various university. I think maybe on the context of refugee who are among the Kenyan population and who are also students, they should have like maybe the institution like UNHCR and the government, let's say the Ministry of Education, should have like a well-laid platform, let's say a frame that captures all the details of refugees who are perhaps in secondary school, and they should have a well-laid framework on how to enroll them in maybe high school. And once what you said after they are done with maybe the universities, because Kenyans, once you are done with your high school, perhaps you are saying your university, even your parent knows that at that moment you are now becoming independent. Yeah? So it's getting so hard for refugee once they are done with their studies, maybe getting employment opportunity, which it is much easier for Kenyan one maybe to get an internship or attachment in these various, let's say, institutions and corporates, which is a bit hard for refugees. So it will be so easy if a well-laid framework that captures every detail of refugees and maybe their aspiration and their career and where they want to go way forward.
Yeah, well, I think there's a document called the Global Compact on Refugee.
Oh, yeah.
It gives a blueprint for governments and agencies and stakeholders of refugees to know how to respond to the refugee crisis and situation, as well as supporting also their host communities. I think I also feel the same as I feel sometimes it's more theory than even practical bit. But anyway, it's efforts. We've already been speaking about what is the after thought about education, like when they've gone to school, then what? For you, she spoke about limited funding, limited scholarship, and we've spoken about all that, like a framework also to the same. Well, I think we've been able to discuss on that better. Unless there's anyone who wants to add anything more on education,
yes, I would love to add what my brother just says. Like I will talk about low level of participation for refugees, like employment inclusiveness. That one is after university.
Yes.
When you look at Kenya, they have a policy. When you graduate from university, for instance, the university I come from has a host community. They take number of graduates to either go for internship, that is, government is offering them internship, 12-month internship, or you join NYS, that is National Youth Service. But for refugees, we are not in a position to access these services. We don't have that one. And when you look at the things, everything look different. Yeah. The reason why I'm saying everything look different is, what if the Kenyan government or the Kenyan government working with the UNHCR try to put some policies that, so when this refugee graduate, why don't we at least take at least 2% of the refugees to be included in these activities that is happening. So most of the time when these refugees finish when they graduate, they have nowhere to go. They just go back to the camp. And when they go back to the camp, when you look at the salaries that they are getting, you can imagine somebody having a degree, getting 7,000 Kenya shilling, and the host community are getting more than, I think that is 7,000 or 8,000 is below the poverty line of Kenya, because when you look at the poverty line is 10,000, that is 250 per day. So this person is being paid maybe 70 shilling per day. So there's a lot of things that need to be implemented when it comes something to do with employment or after graduation. Yeah, so my question is, so we are being prepared for us to go outside, that's so that we can be independent, all this stuff. But how are we going to obtain that if we are not in a position to access employment? There's no roadmap for us. It is as if you have just taken someone to school, but they have learned, but they're not utilizing whatever they learn in school. Yeah. Let's take an example of, personally, I'm an entrepreneur. So the other thing is about accessing documentation or work documentation. Well, my brother have talked about.
Yeah, I think that's part of the barriers I wanted us to speak out. But good, you were setting up the base of actually what we need to further broaden this conversation. But I just wanted to move forward to your actual activities you do in the community. You're part in the community, you do something in the community. I want to give you actually more time to also speak about the activities you do, but more particularly, would you tell us, even access to opportunities for refugees, is it easy? Is there, can you tell us a few opportunities you know, or there are not any that you know? Maybe you can start with
maybe just, if you allow me, just take you back a little bit on education. Right. I hear the cry. And I normally feel, because I've been in forums where that is the cry. I mean, refugee, I mean, we are not doing this. Kenyans are being doing this. And I think that's, for me personally, it's a dangerous trend because you need to understand the operating environment, even of the education system in Kenya. Actually, right now, they are transitioning. We had a lot of issues because this knowledge should come out clearly. We had a lot of issues with forgery of certificates in this country by Kenyans. So we have someone who never went to high school but has a degree. We had people who never went to primary but they have Form 4 certificates, Kenyans. So the education system is undergoing a transition. So normally when you're undergoing a transition, accommodating it can be slow, because even right now, for me, I'm a parent. My kids have to, there's a system now, you register your kid right from, I think it's PP1. The government is trying to establish, it's a new system. As we never went through that. You just went to school, you get certificates. So that transition has affected, that's why you say, you might look at the UNHCR as theoretical, but they are still negotiating. They can't tell you where they are.
Do you think it has taken a lot of time, a longer time? Because issues about people forging their certificates been there for a while, and you wouldn't say that particularly affects inclusion of refugees, because
it doesn't affect, but we have a problem in this house called Kenya education system, and now there's another one advocating for something else. So where are the priorities? So the means of education, I feel personally, they have prioritized stabilizing the system, because even right now Kenyans are crying about the CBC. So now who will government listen to?
Yeah, there's the issue of CBC, of course. Yeah.
You get so priorities. So sometimes I'm not saying our government is good and perfect, but I'm saying, hey, we need to understand what is happening. So people who are advocating for inclusion in terms of education need to bring out what is happening in the education sector first. Because now with this knowledge, now we'll not, because I don't want, actually in Kitengela we don't call them, in our context as well, we don't call them refugees, we call them special friends. Because the idea of a refugee is already stigmatized. So I say, I don't want someone to feel like there's biasness. This is a system that was in place. We are trying to introduce change, and this is government in Africa. We may not have everything in place. So priorities might differ, because something might be presented for refugees, And here, there's an issue for Kenyans by Kenyans, definitely priority. So I'm saying, yes, inclusion is a bit low in terms of jobs, even after. My take and my presentation here would be, we should have awareness. When UNHCR, these policymakers, NGOs, they should get who are the employers. So sometimes have forums with the private society and tell them, hey, we have refugees who are gifted and they have schooled in your system.
Yeah.
Why can't you pick them for attachment?
Yeah.
Instead of going through the government, why can these employers be up? There's a private sector, a big industry.
Yeah.
Why can UNHCR call a forum? It has that capacity. Yes, so that they know, hey, it's not just Kenyans we are talking about here when we talk about attachment. We have refugees here. Because sometimes going through government in Africa, you know the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think well said. You're talking about stability and slow in inclusion. I think all that issues around education and even touching to many other things, like even inclusive economy. We know refugees will face very difficult in getting certain documents for business, for